Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us. Wow, so we get to follow Todd, and we get to stand between you and cocktails. That's a really hard place to be. So thank you so much for the introduction. Chris and I are excited to share with you a pain that I think that we're all facing, whether you're a startup entrepreneurial business or you're a U.S. bank that's been around for many, many years. The recruitment challenges in the market today are incredible, but we're hopefully here to offer some solutions for you. So as we all know that do you have the clicker? Okay. See if I can do this. Whoa, back. Okay. We all know that the coronavirus pandemic has had a huge impact on the economy as a whole, but really, I think one of the biggest impacts has been on just the methods and tools that we use as it relates to, finding and recruiting top talent, onboarding talent, training talent, and really the policies and procedures that we've had to put in place around remote work and workplace safety. I think all of those factors have really come into play. And then on top of all of it, finding the right fit. How do you vet and find the right fit for candidates in this process? So the good news is that there's a lot of hiring happening. In a national survey, 82% of employers indicated that they plan to hire in 2021 or 2022. About 47% said that was to replace or backfill staff, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that's looked like. And then about 35% planned to hire for new positions, because growth is still happening. I think that, one of the challenges that we're facing is really being able to recruit new talent while still taking good care of the people that we have, because we don't want to lose them. And so kind of finding that balance in the process. I don't know if any of you read a couple of days ago, Anne Golden-Egley had written an article that went out in Cascade Business News, and it really talked about the Great Resignation and kind of balancing that with leadership. And one of my takeaways from that was that there has never been a time, she said, when your focus and attention on your people has been more important. They need you now more than ever. So just something to keep in mind as we talk about recruitment today. Don't forget about the people that you have, because retention is equally or greater importance, because the cost of losing talent is so great. You know what, I'm gonna let you click because I have way too much going in my hand. So when Monster did a national survey, and they were surveying employers on what they thought, there were a lot of challenges as it related to recruitment. So it wasn't just these three, but the top three that came up were finding candidates with the right skills in a shrinking workforce, work-life balance expectations of candidates, and right alongside that was compensation expectations. And then the third in terms of ranking was virtual recruiting, how to determine fit. So virtual recruiting and virtual onboarding. So we talk about the shrinking workforce. And so a third of employers out there right now are saying that there's a pretty significant skill gap, and it's really increased from over a year ago. There's a lot of reasons for that. But 95% of workers out there are considering a job change. And because there's a skill gap out there, employers are having to make concessions and hire people without the desired skills that they have and invest in people and be willing to train. So there's opportunities for these 95% that are looking to make a change. When employers were surveyed about the top soft skills that they were looking for. So if you can't get the hard skills, you might as well get the soft skills, right? And their top soft skills were dependability, teamwork and cooperation, problem solving and critical thinking, and the ability to be flexible. And flexibility has a lot of connotations in this environment, but really the flexibility that they were looking for was people who were willing to do things outside their job description. When you're short-staffed, everybody has to put on a hat and make it happen. And so they were looking for people who were flexible and being willing to participate in that. There's a lot of talk about the Great Resignation that's happening, and so that's causing certain sectors of business to really struggle in finding talent. And I thought it was interesting. The 3 industries that they identified that were struggling the most were finance and banking. And I got to thinking about that. Gee, I don't know, you all are pretty young, but when I first came into recruiting 25 years ago, most bank presidents started as a teller. They were a frontline row teller, and they worked their way up. They probably got a 4-year education or even an MBA at some point throughout that career path, but it was definitely, they were invested in. US Bank is actually, you know, we used to say if you could recruit somebody out of US Bank, you got somebody who was really well trained, because they had not just informal, but very formal training and development programs, and they had career paths for their employees. That's not as prevalent as it used to be in the banking world. And I think that's causing them, because they're not growing their talent from within, they're now facing a pretty significant shortage. And my favorite story is, you know, Patty Moss. Many of you probably know her if you've been in Central Oregon very long. She started at Bank of the Cascades as a bank teller, and she was the CEO and president for many, many years. So I think it just goes to show, as Chris and I are going to talk further today about investing in your people, if we don't have the training and development programs in place, where are we going to get the talent? Another sector that's really struggling to attract people that are, and this is kind of the new to the workforce people, is real estate. And I think part of that is that real estate's been so volatile over the last 10, 15 years that I say youth, but the 22 to 25-year-olds that are coming out of college today, you know, their families may have lost their homes in the Great Recession, you know, and so real estate isn't as attractive to them as it might have been previously, just because of the volatility. And then the final sector that's really struggled to attract talent, not attract talent, but to have enough talent, is technology. And part of that is just, it's changing so quickly. And if somebody came out of school 3-5 years ago with an information sciences degree and they haven't been using it, or they were a programmer 5 years ago and they're not actively continuing to develop their skills, they're no longer of as great a value to an employer. And so I think that those are, you know, kind of the reasons that those 3 sectors are struggling. I thought it was really interesting because when they asked employers, you know, as you're looking and you're trying to assess these people that you're going to have to train and develop, you know, how do you determine what skills they're bringing to the table? And there was definitely a consensus that they feel that this current employment group is having a hard time articulating their transferable skills. So they said about 2/3 of the workforce that they're looking to hire, they think they could do the job, but they're having a hard time selling themselves. So they need to take Todd's class, I think, because they need to know how to sell themselves and how their skills are transferable. So let's move on and talk about this growing skills gap and kind of what's causing the labor shortage. There is a growing crisis. They say that we're not at the top of the labor shortage. We're actually just headed into it. 2030 should be the top of the curve as it relates to the labor shortage. So we got to get creative, people, because it's only going to get harder. And so that's what we're hoping to give you some tools and ideas today. By 2030, the baby boomers will be 65. They'll be retiring. Us older Gen Xers, we're going to be starting to look at retirement. And so who's going to save the workforce? It's Gen Z. And right now they represent 25% of the US population. So they're there. We just have to figure out what motivates them and how do we bring them into our teams. So who is Gen Z? They're born 97 to 2012. Some of the characteristics of Gen Z are they are pursuing higher education. Their parents were typically Gen Xers, and so they valued education, and so they're encouraged to pursue education. Interesting statistic, 57% of high school graduates go on to college, but only 50% of them finish either a 2 or 4 year degree. So how do we keep them in school, or how do we bring them out and skill them up ourselves? They're digitally native. Millennials, the curses of the world, they definitely grew up with technology, but this generation, the Gen Zers, they don't know anything different. And so they're very digitally native, which can really add a lot of value to our work environments. They've grown up in really unstable times. So again, many of them, were growing up during the Great Recession. Their parents may have lost their homes. They were seeing instability. Some of their siblings may have been trying to enter the workforce and struggled. And then now they're going through high school and college during the pandemic. There's some benefits to that, which we'll get to. And then they also really desire competitive comp and benefits packages. They crave stability for growth opportunity. And they really want to know that they have a career path. So let's talk a little bit about the craving of stability and growth. They are loyal because they grew up in unstable times. They are seeking, even Gen Xers and millennials. I mean, we moved jobs because we had better opportunities. We weren't committed to employers like this group could be. However, we have to be showing them a career path. And some creative things that we're seeing our clients do is creating levels. So somebody comes in as a client success advocate in training, and then they become a client success advocate 1, and then a 2, and then a 3. And you give them promotional opportunities every 3 to 6 months. Because if a new college grad comes into a job, if they don't have a promotional opportunity within a year, 78% of them are leaving their employer. So it truly is about giving them and showing them how they can advance within the organization and giving them opportunities. We can capitalize on their desire for stability. We just have to give them back what they need. They also have a real keen, we're going to talk about this in the interview process too, but they have a real keen interest in the organization, how they responded to the pandemic, and also what is their social responsibility focus. You don't have to be a nonprofit organization to attract this group. You just have to demonstrate that you care about your community, you care about the greater good, and you're going to do things in your benefits package that promote that. One of the things many of our clients are doing is giving paid time off to volunteer. We see everything from 8 hours a year to 30, 40 hours a year that they are giving to employees to go and do something. They can pick what it is, but that they can go give back. And that means a lot to employees. I think creating that best place to work is really what's going to help us attract the right talent as you begin to grow your organizations. So they're going to ask more questions in the interview process, and I've seen this with some of our clients. They get a little uncomfortable. They think they're being nosy. Why do they want to know that? But they really are going to interview us as much as we're interviewing them. So sell them. Be transparent. Like I said, show them that career path, even in the interview process. Yes, you would come in this role, but this is where you could be in a year, this is where you could be in 3 years, and this is where you could be in 5 years. And be prepared to answer the tough questions, and show them the money. I mean, the wages are increasing, and it's becoming a fight for talent. Many of you probably heard this summer we had some of our resorts offering $25 an hour plus benefits for housekeepers. It is almost impossible to find a non-skilled general laborer for less than $20 an hour. So our entry-level labor housekeepers are getting what new college grads are getting with student loan debt. So we need to be competitive, come up with creative ways to compensate employees. I think the startup community is really attractive to a lot of new grads, because they want to be a part of something. So teach them, bring them along with you as you grow your business and you go out and get funding. Let them that experience and education they will value as much as they value the compensation. So it really ends up being about the bigger picture. Some of the, one of the only other thing that I just wanted to talk about is what is impacting that labor shortage, and just a few things. Fewer people are having fewer kids than they used to. Used to be 3, 4 children. 1 to 2 is very, very common. We also have couples waiting longer to have children, which has created a gap in the talent pipeline, I guess is the best way to say that. We've had accelerated retirement over the last couple of years. So I heard an interesting statistic that anybody who was within 5 years of retirement, we lost about 50% of that employee population through the pandemic because they just didn't want to deal with it. And they figured out maybe they made a sacrifice in some type of, maybe they had a second house they wanted to purchase and buy, and they maybe opted not to just so that they could retire and leave the workforce during the pandemic. The borders have been shut for a few years. It's been, I don't know if any of you have worked with H-1B visas, but it's been almost impossible to get an H-1B for many, many years now, since kind of the early part of the Trump administration, as the borders got shut, and then we had the pandemic on top of that, so that again shrinks our talent pipeline. The opt-outs, so that's the 2 million people have opted out of the workforce due to childcare costs, availability, safety concerns, or stress, just since the beginning of 2020. We've lost 2 million people in the workforce, and that does include that retirement group. And then finally, the shift to gig work. So 1 million people have shifted from traditional employment to project work, gig work. That's actually an advantage for, I think, the startup community, is that that's a great way to bring people into your organization without having to make a long-term commitment to them. That's what they want, and they can bring a lot of times really great value if you give them that kind of flexibility. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Harris to talk about challenge number 2.
Thank you, Karen. So with limited introduction there, challenge 2, obviously the work-life balance and the expectations that the candidates and the employees have going in there. Researchers are showing that with the safe and gradual return to face-to-face work, we should be seeing that as a normal here rather shortly. We're seeing some advances in the COVID shots, whatever, and the number of people that are vaccinated, and as well as the ways that people are emphasizing safety in the workplace. So separation between desks and workstations, limited public entry, temperature screenings, and other procedures are already in place and are just going to be more prevalent. With this return to work, the expectations that a lot of these candidates and applicants are having are the remote and flexible work schedules. And hybrid work does not mean flexible. Flexible is being able to do what you need to do, put your family first in situations like basketball games, graduations, work, dance recitals, whatever that may be, because COVID really made everybody realize that maybe they were spending too much time away from their families, and putting an emphasis back on that. Another thing that applicants are looking for, the higher wages and salary protection. Like Karen said, we're no longer competing with just local markets here in Central Oregon. We've got national competitors and major players that we're having to steal talent from, or even try and get them to be attracted to you. Also looking for those improved health policies and safety procedures, like I mentioned, as well as a belief in mission and in the mission and what you're doing at work. We spend so much time at the office doing what we love, thankfully, Karen and I, but if it's not an environment or a mission or a company that you truly believe in, that's somewhere where you may not stay and you may lose talent because of that.
I want to just touch on really quick. So yes, we are competing for talent nationally, but with the way technology has evolved and the ability to work remote, if you're in Central Oregon, the advantage of that is we also now have access to talent nationally. So we've had a limited pool in our region of, 250,000 people in the entire region. And so I do think there are some real advantages. The other piece is, don't compete with Seattle and Portland. Look at talent in the Midwest, look at talent in the South, because if you truly can provide remote work opportunities, we can offer wages, Central Oregon wages, that are very, very competitive for their cost of living in their areas, and there's some great talent in those markets. So while we're losing some of our talent to the national market, we also can grab talent from the national market.
So this graph over on the right of your screen was from an article on LinkedIn that was shared like wildfire recently. Despite the return to the office or hybrid work models, Bend, Oregon still remains the #1 place where applicants are applying for remote work opportunities based off percentages. So over 41% of all applicants in Central Oregon, and Bend specifically, are applying for remote exclusive jobs. I mean, it's such a beautiful place to live. The outdoor activities are literally in our backyard. So why wouldn't you want to come live here? It's the lack of jobs in specific industries that just may not be here yet, or that hopefully are moving here, where people aren't willing to sacrifice that career because they came here for this lifestyle.
And I think most people can find the opportunities they're looking for. However, I did have a marine biologist that wanted a job here in Central Oregon and wanted to work remote, and those weren't as prevalent. So, but most of the career paths they can find remote work.
Yep. Perfect. And you may be a business owner, a startup, or somebody that's just directly involved in recruiting and hiring and maybe wondering, how do you compete for talent at these top levels? Well, we've got a couple of tips for you. So being creative. So according to a study from Global Workplace Analytics, 25% of all US workers will be working multiple days from home by the end of 2021. That means opening yourself up to hybrid models, to job sharing, where you have 2 or more people working on the same role, so you can offer them higher wages by saving yourself money on benefits. Like Karen mentioned, we are now looking nationally for candidates. That means if you're opening roles up fully remote, targeting areas that will be lower cost of living, like the South and the Midwest, or be willing to pay those national wages to get that talent elsewhere. Using digital tools to reach that target audience, so whether or not that's social media platforms, job boards, be out there, be interacting with the public, be in those LinkedIn groups, whether or not you're software engineers, developers, even in hospitality, be a part of that and get your name there. And then define the career pathing, like Karen said. Bring somebody in as a customer care specialist in training, bring them up to a full-fledged 1, 2, 3, or even senior level. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for that growth and development, even if it's not just to like senior management, developer, or even into VP roles. They want some sort of career growth. And then finally, sell your mission. You need to know why people should be coming to work for you. You should be able to effectively sell why you decided to start this company, and surround yourself with those people that are your biggest cheerleaders, because that sort of mentality and culture is infectious.
I was going to say, we have a client up in the Pendleton area that just put this the owners put an incredible video together that just really told about why they do what they do. And they are a for-profit organization, but they really defined their mission as an organization, their mission to serve their employees, their mission to serve their clients. And they tag that on every job posting that they put out there. And it has made a huge impact. And they are in the healthcare space, and so they have fierce competition for talent right now, and it has made a huge impact. So, think about, that's kind of that combination of selling your mission and using your digital tools. One video can get miles. I don't know if I'm pointing at the right place.
So the third challenge, the virtual recruiting and the onboarding process. Virtual recruiting is at its all-time high and will only keep getting bigger, but the biggest thing that people are seeing is that fit, culture, that may be at risk. You might not be finding that right person or not finding that right company. So with these challenging parts of this onboarding and recruiting process, we broke it down to 4 for you that we have been seeing. So assessing candidates during the interview process. When you get to that interview, make sure you are prepared. Make sure that you understand what it is you are specifically looking for and what is important to you and other stakeholders in the organization. Those soft skills, the culture fit, that's important, but those hard skills, and how do you assess that virtually? Being able to have work samples provided, working on projects, having problems to solve, or giving them a presentation to give. Things like that have been effective for finding that hard skill and making sure this is the right person for you. Identifying those quality candidates quickly. We only have about 10 days now from when a candidate is looking for work to when they are actually in a new position. So time is a luxury we absolutely do not have. You have to, if you believe that they are a culture fit and that those soft skills, so the hard skills are there or could be trained easily, you need to jump quickly on them. And then effectively screening those candidates during the pre-interview. So again, understanding their motivations, what their career goals are, and what you have to offer matches with them, and making sure that the clear understanding of your culture fits what they're looking for. And if those absolute hard skills are not there, dismiss the candidate right away. Don't string them along. And then lastly, getting responses and engaging with those candidates. Being virtually, it doesn't matter if it's a direct message, a phone call, an email, whatever it is, you need to convey your message quickly and sell yourself in just a couple seconds. Have your elevator pitch ready and sell that experience of virtual onboarding that we're all dealing with. Although the US is leading the change right now with the virtual hiring practices, with 70% of recruiters using online onboarding or virtual onboarding for at least half of their hires, only 26% of the global respondents, 26 of the global respondents still struggle with mastering this skill set. You're good. And then candidates are still struggling to assess the company culture and job fit through this virtual hiring. 75% of them agree that this virtual hiring process makes it difficult to assess whether or not the culture is aligned with their own. In industries such as leisure, hospitality, transportation, logistics, and retail, only 18% of recruiters are doing any online onboarding and hiring.
I think it's really interesting. Candidates want to work remote and want to work virtual, but they don't love the virtual interview process because they don't feel like they connect with people. I guess they think they're going to after they're employed. But that is definitely a challenge for prospective employees. So make sure you make that a conversational. We have a few clients who've done some creative things where they don't get your interview groups too big, don't have the Brady Bunch on the screen, because then they don't connect with any one person. I would definitely, if you have a candidate that you're considering making an offer to, partner them up with one of your biggest company champions and have them do an interview with them and just get to know them, have it be informal. I used to always say, take them to lunch, take them to coffee. We can't do that anymore in this virtual environment. And so have an equivalent of that with one of your, it doesn't even have to be a decision maker. It just has to be somebody who tells your company story really well.
Yeah, we've had clients that ask what their coffee order is, and we'll DoorDash them a coffee from time to time, just something like that to separate yourself from the pack. And some other helpful things, or things that Karen and I have noticed from clients that have been successful through this virtual online onboarding process, not just breaking down into these smaller, more intimate groups like Karen mentioned, but video conferencing at every possible chance that you can. If you can't be face-to-face, that's the absolute next best thing. Making sure you don't spread out your interviews too far. We have seen multiple candidates lost because it's been days or weeks between interviews, too many interviews, people getting lost because of that, not knowing who they're interviewing, unfortunately. And that's just one way that you can definitely lose out on that top talent. Be sure to tell your company's story, why you started the business, or why you came to work for this company. You need to be able to sell your story to effectively get that person on your team.
So why did you come to work for Specialized Recruiting Group? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you called me while I was door dashing after I graduated, and were one of the few people to actually give me a call back, and really believed in Connie and Stephanie, our old owners, and the whole idea of just helping people. But yes.
Way to punt.
Okay. One more.
It's not moving.
Oh, I think point it. There we go. Cool. And then the onboarding process. So we've kind of compiled our best practices to help you be successful, because that's ultimately what we want. We want you all to be successful through this process. These are the 10 tips that we will give you here today to help you in your process there. So number one, over-prepare for your new employees. When working in these virtual environments, it's so easy for details to get missed, lost, and when you're bringing somebody on and they're putting all this new information in virtually, they're going to have a real fun time with that. So creating detailed guidance, even if it feels overly detailed, will pay off dividends down the road. Try leveraging other tools like Asana boards and other ways to prioritize these programs and keep them on task and on progress. Fill the downtime with special self-study items, so that's documents, essential articles, work, competitors, anything to fill those gaps and break up the monotony that it is with onboarding. Schedule face-to-face introductions with the team. Get them right away feeling like they're a part of that group and get those introductions. Setting up virtual meetings with other crucial members and colleagues. Anyone that's outside of their core group that they will be interacting with, Get them in front of them, craft a couple starter questions, break the ice, because they will be interacting with them later down the road. And then connect them with other virtual colleagues. That way they can use them as a resource, tips, tricks, or any strategies down the road.
I saw a really cool, it was almost like, it was like a Visio kind of troubleshooting tool that we had a client give a candidate that was coming on board of like, if you need this, call this person. If you just to navigate, like if you need this, call this person, and just really line that out for them, because in a virtual environment, it is just so easy to sit there and be stuck. And then if all else fails and you don't know who to ask, call this person. They'll help you navigate. So that it's very important to let them know if they're virtual, 100% virtual, make sure they know who to go to and how to get help.
And then check in with them regularly. Especially do this at the very beginning, the first couple months. Do it more than you would with your normal in-office employees. That will create that communication barrier breakdown, and they'll be coming to you more frequently. Identify somebody that would be an off-hours mentor, especially for someone that's remote in a different time zone. Identify somebody that they can go to when you may be offline. Document everything. It's essential that you make sure that you have things written down for processes and procedures, and it's not just in your head, because they need to be able to find that resource and go back to that. And use your internal experts. It's no fun listening to one person talk, so if somebody else is an expert on some sort of internal onboarding, bring that person in, let them teach that part. And lastly, rethink your budget. Consider scheduling virtual luncheons, coffee groups, and everybody getting on virtually at that point to break down those barriers and feel like you are a part of that team.
Just this morning, I had a candidate I was talking to, and kind of really interesting, her organization, she actually had left the organization to, one of the things we didn't talk about in terms of like the group that left the workforce were people who were just struggling to find either quality or affordable childcare. And so this was an individual who had left the workforce to do that. And I said, so, what have you been doing over the last year? And she said, well, my company contracted back with me because we had all these great policy and procedures manuals, but nothing was live. And so they hired her back as a contractor to put it into a SharePoint document so that as they changed processes and procedures, that those could be updated in real time by anybody who had the permissions to do it. And they gave different permissions for different sections of the procedures manual. I just thought it was really awesome because she said, they're going to be virtual potentially indefinitely. And we had nothing live. We had no live document for our policies and procedures. So I thought that was a really creative idea. So the perfect storm is brewing. But I hope that we've given you some hope and some ideas. See, you're going to have the advantage over all your competitors because you were here today and you have some ideas on what to do. Set yourself apart, be different. If we can help, we would love to. And just a little bit about Specialized Recruiting Group. We're the professional and executive search division of Express Employment Professionals. Express is an international franchise organization. We have about 850 franchises across the U.S. and Canada. And our Specialized Recruiting Group division is very specific to skilled recruitment. And what we do differently is we go after passive candidates. We always have. But today it's more important now than ever. You can do that with an internal recruiter or you can use an outside resource. But that's the way you're going to get your best talent. We, day after day, are having clients come to us to say, I've had this job posted for 90 days or 6 months. I've had 2 qualified applicants. And because I was waiting to have more, I lost those 2. So, really, really think about how to be different, how to be creative. Again, whether it's internal or external, we work with clients and candidates across the country out of the Bend office. We recruit candidates from all over, and so the access to talent is great. We can relocate people in, and we can leave people where they are and let them work remote, work across a variety of niches. So, keep us in mind if you need some external support. We can help with contract staffing as well. So as you're growing your business, if you're not ready to hire a core full-time professional, let's talk, because we might be able to help plug and play somebody for a 30-day or a 60-day or a 1-year project for you. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. And if you want to give us a call to brainstorm and even just chat about potential solutions or troubles you're having, Chris or I both would be happy to help. So with that, we'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you so much, Karen and Chris. I think it's so important for us to get a real picture of what is happening, because I think everyone kind of has their ideas about what is happening, but hearing some of that data and some of those stories from you is just so helpful to actually paint the picture. Any questions from our live audience today? Yes. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So compliments to your presentation. Thank you for the ideas. Thank you for the information. Well done.
Well, this audience is at a great place to be able to define, to sell your vision, sell what you've got, because money and people have to pay their bills. Compensation and benefits are important, but you can overcome a lot of that with your mission. We all know all about labor of love, right, Roger?
I always say I'm a better person when my bills are paid. It's a true story. Yes, question from you. Yeah, so such a great question. State regulations are changing in terms of employees being able to choose to work everywhere. How should companies navigate that?
We have a few local clients that have definitely started facing that, and they are looking to set up payroll in those particular states, and sometimes there's a gap from when they need to have it set up, and so we provide an interim payroll solution for them. Or you can always go with a PEO or a leasing company that most. In fact, globally, we just worked with a client locally that wanted to employ somebody in Uruguay, and so we worked with an international leasing organization so that they could employ them. Technology candidate.
Wow. Loved your pitch last month. Any other questions from the live audience? Okay, I think I have one on virtual. If Gen Z is motivated by growth paths and benefits packages, how will a startup be able to attract them? Question of the day. Do you want to answer that?
Your mission, absolutely your mission, and why you decided to start this company. What was your goal with that? That is how you're going to get this group. And like Karen mentioned, they're very loyal. So if you're able to attract them to that, and what your purpose is, and whether or not that's whatever sector, that's how you're going to get that person and getting them to believe in that fully.
The rubber is meeting the road, my friends. Okay, let's see. We've got another one. If there has been a significant decline, or there has been a significant decline in available talent within the construction trades, what would you recommend a small independent contractor should do to attract talent? That's a really great question.
I don't want to give away any secrets, but I know that there are a few companies in town that are looking at alternative work schedules for contractors, which is really, definitely something that other industries have done, but you've not seen a lot in the general labor and contractor trade, but looking at creative work schedules to meet family needs and work-life balance. So that's one. Wages are definitely going up. I mean, that is So everything's more expensive, building materials, wages. So the consumer is obviously, paying for that. But it is, in Central Oregon in particular, we've never seen anything like it. Will it level? I think it will. I really thought it was going to level in September, I'll be honest, after they ended the benefits. It really hasn't quite yet. But I think just coming up with creative things, having company work days to give back in the community, even that workforce too, it's important to them that they work for a company that cares and gives back.
Creative thinking for the win. Also, gosh, opportunities for lots of us to make changes, huh? Any questions from the live audience? I don't want to miss anyone. Other than higher salary, Other than higher salary, what other incentives can be used to attract talent? Do you have something to add to that one? I feel like.
Besides adding to your mission and the flexible schedules, those are the main ways. Even some wholesaler retailers in town, if they're unable to be an interesting place to work, they're going to offer flexible schedules. People can make their own hours, and they have very competitive wages. That's how they're getting those individuals, and they're one of the more successful ones on our light industrial teams.
We definitely have the clients that have the powder days. If there's powder day, you don't even have to call in. If they set an inch amount, if there's more than 4 or more than 6 inches, you don't even have to call in, just show up when you're done. So that's attractive to a lot of us Central Oregonians. We have another client that, they take every Friday afternoon in the summer and ride dirt bikes and mountain bikes because it's their industry. So, I think it depends on who you are and who your workforce is, but figure out what they want, what they need, survey them. But if you survey them, respond to their survey. You got to do something with it.
Big time for evolution, yes. This is huge, right? How do we maintain and build company culture when we're remote?
That's a whole nother seminar. Just stay connected. I think Chris mentioned we have a few clients that do we actually have a healthcare organization. They do a virtual happy hour once a month and have a bottle of wine delivered to everybody. And then everybody that wants to jump on the Zoom, they do. So there's just the fun things, I think, are what creates the culture. Doing your strategic planning as an entire organization so that they feel bought into what you're doing. All of those sorts of things can help you stay connected. But there are a lot of tips and tricks out there that it is much beyond a really kind of off the cuff comment. Do you have anything to add to that? No.
Yeah, prioritizing care, community, kindness, generosity, right? Like being really forward-facing about our values. Any other questions? I know I have another virtual, but with so much focus and funding shifting to selling your company to a prospect, how can you then maintain that exorbitant cost after they're hired? Won't they just quit if it doesn't continue?
I think that's kind of up to you as an organization, honestly. If you've sold your story well, you've picked the right candidate, and you live your story, they're probably going to stay. If you're providing the career path and you're keeping them engaged, they will stay. I really do feel, beyond the 100-day mark, that is the hard part. The first 100 days, they're trying you out, you're trying them out. If you have any way you can potentially meet them face-to-face, do it. Even if it's just a one-time thing. But I think it's really critical to make that connection and figure out how to make sure they know you care about them.